What if I told you that the Centurion AVRE is one of the hardest vehicles to represent accurately in a game? In this video, I'm going to show you how well Gaijin managed to represent this vehicle in War Thunder. This vehicle is by far one of the most rolling vehicles in the game. You can hit enemies hiding behind rocks, use your shell to ricochet into their holes,
to the map. Target destroyed.
and even turn your entire vehicle into a barricade. Since most players don't really know where to shoot, especially because of your era, you can often survive situations where other tanks would not. On top of that, you can even destroy light tanks purely through raw explosive force. If I had to give this vehicle a single tag, it would be fun focused, and honestly, that's because this vehicle is terrible at long range. The sights don't really help, and the extremely low muzzle velocity makes accurate long distance shots very difficult. However, these weaknesses turns into a strength in close combat. You don't need precise aim to deal damage. The dorsal blade also helps compensate for the poor armor of the Centurion Mark V. Sitting at BR 7.0, you constantly face opponents between 6.3 and 6.7, one of the most populated BR ranges in the game. For defensive measures, the 360-degree commander machine gun is very useful for clearing bushes or destructible cover that might block your shots. Additionally, the vehicle is surprisingly survivable. You are rarely one-shot, and the smoke grenade launchers can be used effectively to confuse enemies and disengage. In terms of mobility, this is definitely not a fast vehicle. It's heavy, underpowered like most British tanks, and has very poor turning performance. The transmission does not help either. Protection-wise, this vehicle performs extremely well, and there are very few vehicles you can truly compare it to at this BR. Now that you know a bit about how this vehicle performs in-game, how accurate is it compared to the real one? To be honest, researching this vehicle is difficult, information is scarce, and while museum visits help from a technical standpoint, most of the available material focuses on historical stories rather than detailed specifications, which I still highly recommend looking into. From what I found, much of the information is ambiguous, so don't expect this analysis to be 100% definitive. Starting with the name and designation, it is completely accurate, which is surprisingly rare. The overall appearance of the vehicle is also very well modeled and faithful to its conventional layout. However, there are some missing options that could improve authenticity. The lack of an option to remove the era, while it does not add much weight, having a choice to remove it could slightly improve mobility and give players more flexibility in how they use the vehicle. With this option, the vehicle could also gain an additional extra armor configuration, representing fascines used to cross trenches or field obstacles, although not actual fascines, as that would require a completely new game mechanic. This configuration would add only around 10mm of protection, mainly against high explosive damage, and would limit forward gun depression. It would also be incompatible with era, meaning both options could not be used at the same time. For the sake of flexibility, players could also choose to remove this configuration as well. Regarding the vehicle's characteristics, almost everything is accurately represented. The weight, armor layout, crew configuration, the American Browning machine guns introduced on the Centurion Mark V, the engine, transmission, grenade launchers, and even the limitation on gun depression of the rear of the vehicle. The information mentioned above is what I was able to reliably confirm. From this point onward, things become less clear. The high explosive squash head shell appears to be mostly accurate in terms of mass. Different surge sit values of around 27 kilos, 29 kilos, and in some cases up to 30 kilos, with 29 kilos being the most commonly referenced figure. The explosive filler is also generally seated at around 50 kilograms, which aligns well with both the shell weight and the in-game representation. However, the explosive type and its effective mass seem somewhat inconsistent. Sources often describe the filler as C4 or PE4, while the game represents it as in RDX/TNT. This is not necessarily incorrect, but rather a simplified designation. That said, several sources claim that explosive filler accounts for roughly half of the shell's total mass, or even up to 18 kilograms. In-game, the filler mass is slightly more than half of the shell's weight, which is still reasonable, but the TNT equivalent appears to be underestimated. RDX is commonly rated at approximately 1.5 times the TNT equivalent, conservatively speaking. This will translate to roughly 24 kilograms of TNT equivalent, which is 4 kilograms less than what is currently represented in game. Gun elevation and depression are mostly accurate. The depression value seem correct, but maximum elevation appears to be around 20 degrees in real life, while the game limits it to 18 degrees. When elevating the gun in-game, it appears to clamp against the turret ring, preventing further elevation. However, it is likely that higher elevation angles could be achieved when the vehicle was stationary, as the AVRE often operated for static positions. Because of this, the in-game limitation is acceptable. There are some details that I was unable to confirm. Although the crew layout is accurate, there appears to have been an additional crew member. In-game, this role is listed as machine gunner, but I could not find solid documentation supporting this, aside from commentaries suggesting that this individual may have acted as a trainee, since the vehicle was operated by a 4-man crew. I even found a photograph that indirectly supports this interpretation, based on the uniform worn. Other information I could not find includes the exact ammunition capacity and the vehicle's real reload speed. As for Hash behavior, its in-game performance is reasonable against tanks and other targets, especially considering that, if used in an anti-tank role, its primary purpose would have been to disable enemy vehicles rather than destroy them outright. With all this information in mind, you might wonder, how did Gaijin implement this vehicle with so little publicly available information? The answer is that Gaijin generally does a very solid job when it comes to vehicle modeling, often going as far as traveling and conducting direct research to ensure accuracy, as seen in their 2018 work on the Abrams and the M60. Additionally, vehicles in the game rarely remain exactly the same as they were at launch. The community actively works to improve the game, and Gaijin itself is encouraging this kind of research and feedback to refine vehicle performance over time. That said, I'm not completely satisfied with the transparency of the information used to improve or correct certain vehicles, and I'm not alone in this. Other players have raised similar concerns. One example is a bug report aimed at improving the kinetic protection provided by the Centurion AVRE. I intentionally saved this point for last, because the information presented in that report aligns closely with the conclusions I reached myself, yet the report did not progress further. Ultimately, if I truly wanted to push for a fully accurate representation of this vehicle, it would likely require direct cooperation or attention for the museum where the Centurion AVRE is currently preserved. So, what do you think? Is the Centurion AVRE accurately represented, or is something still missing? Do you agree with the way Gaijin implements their vehicles and balances them over time? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for watching.